Today we are going to be analysing and looking at the poem called If by Rudyard Kipling. Before we move on to look at language devices and structural devices, what we need to do first is actually to look at the author. So his first and actually full name was Joseph Rudyard Kipling, and we can see that he was born in 1865 and he died in 1936, just before the Second World War. He was an English short story writer, poet and novelist. And what is important is that he was actually born in India, in Bombay, which at that particular time belonged to Britain because of colonisation. When he was 5 years of age, his family moved to England, and obviously Joseph came with his family. He was awarded a Nobel Prize later in his life for literature in 1907. What I think is quite important to note, and is actually very important for this particular poem, is that Kipling was also offered a knighthood on several occasions, but he declined this honour. So we can see that the poet himself was quite humble and did not particularly want the recognition that possibly he deserved. So, looking at the poem, we are going to be analysing the poem using the acronym SLIME. And just to remind yourselves what the SLIME actually stands for. So structure, language, imagery, meaning and effect. Today, this particular screencast is going to be focusing structure, language, meaning, while you yourself are going to be analysing and looking at imagery and the effect that this particular poem creates to you and the audience. Okay? So, before we analyse this particular poem, I want you to read it out loud and look up the words you may not understand. This is very important because poems are not supposed to be read but rather heard. So once you've done that, I want you to hit play once again, and we are going to be continuing with our analysis. Best of luck reading your poem. Welcome back. Now we are going to be looking at structure, and by structure I mean the rhyme scheme of the particular poem. So what I want you to do now is to look at stanza 2. Read it first, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to draw in your anthologies or in a piece of paper what you think the particular rhyme scheme is for this stanza. Once you've done that, once again hit play of this screencast, and we are going to be discussing the rhyme scheme. So let's look at the rhyme scheme. Hopefully you should have something which looks like this. So for example, if you can dream and not make your dreams your master, so master, let's highlight that and write A beside it. We can see that master rhymes with disaster, so disaster should also be A. Then looking at aim, which rhymes with same, that should be B. Spoken and broken obviously rhyme together, so they're C. Fools and tools are D. So you can see that the rhyme scheme is A, B, C, D, C, D. When also looking at structure, we are looking that this particular poem does actually have single sentence lines. So for example, it does not have any enjambment. So you might be wondering, what is enjambment? And enjambment is very simple. It's just a continuation of a sentence or a clause over a line break. So for example, if you had a line which continued into second line without any punctuation at the end of the line, that would be enjambment. And also looking at caesura, which is also a structural device. So caesura is a strong pause within a line. And these are just some examples of caesura. So question mark in the middle of a sentence, a hyphen, exclamation mark, and there are others as well. So you can see that we have some hyphens in this particular poem. So caesura is singular, while caesura, which you add an E after the A, would be plural for caesura. So let's look at the language. Before we actually move on to annotating the poem, count how many times the poet uses the word if. Why do you think he keeps repeating this particular word? Okay, so this is your next task. Count how many times he uses the word if, and then ponder upon this particular question. Once you've done and you think you have the correct answer, so now grab a highlighter or a pen and be ready to annotate your copy of the poem. Remember to grab a different color pen and not just your blue or black. So look at stanza 1. You can see that I have highlighted for you some ifs, okay, which obviously the author uses quite a lot, as that is actual name of the particular poem. So we can see the repetition of if in the poem creates suspense. The poet is piling on the conditions while delaying the consequence. We can see that it says, if you do this and this, if you do this and this, and you must do such and such. But he doesn't actually tell us yet what the consequences of something are. Okay, and also what I highlighted for you in blue is the imperatives. Remember, imperatives are command words. So what is quite interesting is that these particular imperatives do not feel commanding, but they are quite friendly and good-natured. We can see that the poet is giving us advice rather than telling us what to do. Stanza 2. So we have personification in third line, and obviously personification is used to promote caution against impostors as triumph and disaster in this particular poem. The capital letter is used when describing triumph and disaster, grab our attention and make it more memorable. While disaster is negative, triumph is positive. This shows that not everything in life will be positive, but you must deal with this nonetheless. Stanza 3, we can see in yellow that we have some hints of recklessness in the area of gambling. So risk it all, chances must be taken, and life should not be mundane but lived to the full. So life cannot be boring, but do not be excessive as well. So therefore do not gamble everything as well. And the will, which we can see in the last line of stanza 3, is a capital letter for the willpower. Once again, a capital letter is used to emphasize the importance of willpower. And in this particular line, willpower tells us to hold on. So when something is going wrong, the willpower is telling us do not let go, but hold on, everything will be better. Stanza 4. In pink, we can see the underlined you or yours, and this is repetition of the second person singular you. The narrator achieves a direct appeal and maintains our interest. We can see that he is telling us, it's like he's speaking to the reader and the audience. But by the end of the poem, we are shocked that this particular poem is addressed to his son. And we can see that you'll be a man, my son, and there's an exclamation mark, that this exclamation mark can be seen as encouragement to take his advice. We also have a capital M for man, which shows that for Kipling to be a real man is of a great virtue. Also, the words "as my son" come as a shock as we finally realise that this is dramatic monologue. As I've said before, throughout this whole poem, we think that this poem is created because it relates to every single person, and that's what we feel, that this poem relates to so many things. However, we can see that this inspiration to Kipling came because he actually wrote this poem for his son. So for you that do not know what dramatic monologue is where a person speaks directly to another, for example, like a character in a play. And we're moving on to the meaning. So there are several meanings on this particular poem. So we can see that the poet sends us a message to remain humble, avoid extremes, but he's allowing us to gamble as well, but not overdo it. And also to find goodness even in the darkest circumstances. We can see the willpower, which is telling us to hold on, and also to give us advice and tell us what to do. So it is important to know that this poem was published in 1910 and his son died in 1915 in the Battle of Loos. The son was just aged 18, and it is important to think that actually it was the poet Kipling who encouraged his son to go to war in 1915, and obviously the poem was written and certainly published before his son died. And it's up to you to actually think about the effect. So what do you feel when you hear this poem? Okay, what do you think about? Does it make you think about a certain event in your life, a certain problem in your life? And also to remember to use the text when explaining your feelings. So remember to quote, okay, explain your feelings, but remember which phrase made you think about the particular feeling or problem that you might have. So I'm going to leave you now to ponder upon the effect and also to look at the imagery that this particular poem creates. Best of luck in your examinations.